Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome. This is Romola D from Romola D Reports, and I'm here this afternoon again with Ronald Carafo, who is the Massachusetts State Assembly co-coordinator, and we're here with Let Freedom Ring, podcast number 5. And Ron's going to tell us everything about the focus of today's conversation, which I suspect will be a carry on from our previous conversation in podcast 4, where we were talking about birthright Americans versus captured U.S. citizens. And Ron's going to take the conversation a little deeper into state territory, into Massachusetts state territory, and help us all understand what the significance of that really is. So, welcome, Ron. Thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me back, Romola, and it's good to be with the everyday concerned citizens that we have here in Massachusetts.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for making reference to my website, Ron. As people may know, the website that I run, that I've been running for about 7 to 8 years now, I think, is called The Everyday Concerned Citizen. And it was put up way back just to sort of draw attention to some of the terrible situations that all of us are facing in America today and looking at ways to bring people together to make change, to positive change in the world. And, that's sort of a task that still continues. I just put the news out as it comes.
Well, I think for people here in the state, in Massachusetts, it should be the go-to website. And the reason I'm saying that is, not to just give you a pat on the back, but
Mm.
the difference between the everyday concerned citizen site is you do raise the issues of the day, but at the same time, with what we're trying to do here to help our fellow Americans, we're giving them an answer, the solution to what has been happening here now for not only the last couple of years, but we all know how Massachusetts has been conducting itself for a number of years now. So that's the
Sadly,
difference, between
that,
many of the
yes.
sites is they don't, yes, they raise the issues, but what are some of those answers? And we both know that just looking for a better candidate or, we need better officials that are going to listen or so on and so forth, that's not the answer. That's not the solution. It doesn't matter who you put in position today in the state of Massachusetts corporation. Um, they are stuck having to, to follow and comply with the corporate rules and regulations that have been put in place. That's not what the Massachusetts Assembly is about, and it is the Massachusetts Assembly is really the unincorporated legitimate government for Massachusetts. It's just been missing since the Civil War. And what we're trying to do here, thanks to your help, is to make Massachusetts people and others aware that we have to bring that back so that when they're hearing some of your other guests and some of the concerns and the expertise that they bring, they'll know that, wait a minute, that's happening because we're trapped in that jurisdiction where they can uh, impress upon you those mandates, those laws, those statutes, those ordinances. In our jurisdiction, uh, we as individuals in our counties, uh, in our cities and towns, we create those rules and whatever regulations or laws, whatever you might want to call them, we agree upon that as people at the local level. And then what we do is we elect our representatives to go and do the state's business. And from there, they are sent to the Congress, the legitimate Congress, to do business for the United States of America. And that's where the confusion lies is everyone thinks the United States of America you and I are talking about is the United States of America they're talking about. It's not. That's that word art. That's that word magic, if you will. They've switched things around on us, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today.
And I think you've done a tremendous job over the last few podcasts, Ron, showing people that distinction and talking about how there are two jurisdictions we're looking at: the land jurisdiction of the lowercase United States of America, which is the original constitutional republic of the USA, which Anna One Rights has brought back, and which is what all of the states' assemblies are a part of. And then you have the maritime law sea jurisdiction, which is where the current federal US Inc., all in caps, is situated, and has dragged all of the states into through corporatizing or incorporating the states. So they're all states of Massachusetts or states of Delaware or states of California corporations. So it's a total different jurisdiction altogether. And just in reference to what you said about my website, I want to say that like many Americans, like many people in Massachusetts and in America, I've been so disheartened at the state of affairs that I have continued to try to self educate and learn more about what really is happening in the country. And that's when I came across the same information that you are now presenting, that the entire government has actually been taken over. And it was taken over a long time ago. It was incorporated a long time ago. So there was history to wade through. So this is why I've got, interviews with various people across time trying to examine these subjects. I've spoken to B.B. Barkers, David Johnson, Russell J. Gold. Um, I'm trying to think who else on these very subjects. Many of the activists I've worked with also have an awareness of sovereignty and freedom issues. So we've brought that up in our conversations. And now I have this section on my website that is completely devoted to the American States Assembly and the Massachusetts States Assembly, as you know. It's called Restoring America. And at some point, perhaps we'll go to my website and we can show people the whole website and show the Restoring America section, which is a section just for all of
Learning
this,
about, right.
learning about, the original constitutional republic of the USA, what Anna One Rights has been doing, and what the Massachusetts States Assembly is doing, and how people can participate.
And it's, as you mentioned that, Gould or any of those others that you have just talked about, they will all agree that we have not been told the truth about how our history has been laid out. There may be some
Mhm.
disagreement, in some cases, a lot of disagreement as to how to get back to what we originally had. And
That's right.
the difference between Anna and the others that you've talked about is that her with Belcher, her husband, who has that lineage, she's been able to bring back the understanding that Americans still exist and that you have to change your jurisdiction. Not all of them agree with that, but Anna has the standing across the world, as you know, before we came online. She is now the fiduciary for the United States of America and just has recently
Exciting.
put out a statement. And I know it's hard for people to grasp big concepts like that, but that just didn't come overnight. That's just not her, just wanting to be in charge. It's been a number of years of making the world courts, the international jurisdictions understand and become aware that Americans have not disappeared. We are here. We're building back America through the 50 assemblies. And that's the difference. That's the real difference between many of the other people that talk about our history being stolen and what Anna has done. And I would suspect by the end of this year, as we walk through, our podcasts, they're going to begin to see a big
Hmm.
difference. It will be made more public, just what she has done and how effective she has been. But
Hmm. And
today I just
I think
wanted to share where it went awry, where it went wrong.
where it went wrong. Right, that's a great place to start. So feel free to go ahead and share screen if you need to, etc. Ron, I just wanted to make one comment that indeed some of the people I've spoken to understand the importance of what Anna Von Reitz has done, but some of them don't. As you know, Russell J. Gold is running his own show,
Yes.
and it's a little complex, I think, what he's doing, and a little inexplicable. And in terms of how it connects to what Anna is doing, I've been trying to figure it out as well. And all I can see is that Anna recognizes what Russell did because he, at the time of the closing of the third US bankruptcy, he took the American flag and he registered it with the United Nations and with the Pentagon. But that's the US military flag. It is within the sea jurisdiction. So it's not what Anna's doing. She's talking about using the US civil flag, the peacetime flag, but on the land jurisdiction, on the land. So,
Well, you have to claim that you're an American, and I don't think Russell
mm,
does that. Just because he took the flag and did those types of things doesn't bring you back onto the land and have you recognized as an American, which is what Anna has been able to do from the Vatican to the world courts to the international banks. If Russell can show the same effectiveness and what he's not been declared one of the fiduciaries both on the international level, and he's certainly not the fiduciary of the United States of America as she is right now,
okay.
which is going to have a major impact, as you well know, on what the other jurisdiction is going to be able to do. Mandates, all of the other hidden agenda that they have.
Honestly, that will be brilliant. That's something that every American will be happy to see happen, I think. That
Absolutely.
the tyrannical, despotic sea jurisdiction that's been running this country, just based on piracy, it appears, taking over and mind controlling the populace, that they are going to be limited in what they can do and in what they can demand of the people, in fact.
Right, because what they're able to do right now is print those Federal Reserve notes. It's not even money, it's currency. And as Anna has just announced, that will stop. That's ceased. They're no longer able to be able to do that. And
Oh, really?
I
Oh,
I know she's in discussions with
mhm.
with Treasury and with others. That's the authority she has. And we'll be hearing more about that in the coming weeks and months. So it's going to
Brilliant.
be very difficult for them to put together budgets to do some of these types of programs that they've been able to infringe on Americans and just make life so
Oh, can't
miserable.
wait for the day. Yes, really. Making life miserable is
It's
something that
closer
they've
than
done
people
for
think. It's closer than people think.
very good
And,
news, Ron.
so
So go
let
ahead.
me,
Did you want to share screen? I think
yeah,
you're still the presenter. Let me check.
yeah, and let me
Yeah.
share this. Can you can you see
Yes,
this?
I can see your screen.
Okay, so what I really wanted to talk a little bit about today, I'm gonna, not belabor anything, but we've in the past podcast talked about the federal constitutions, and constitutions are just contracts. But as we all
Hmm.
know, we have the federal constitutions, and there's more than one. We also have state constitutions. And ours in Massachusetts was one that was put forward as an example when they were putting together the Constitution for the United States of America. And they were treaties. Everyone, if they can um, comprehend and get wrap their head around, treaties are much more important than constitutions. So
Okay.
everything at
And
the
what is the
beginning,
distinction?
I think it's because of it's the
It's
agreements
international.
between people. It's
Um,
I think it's more personalized. When I think about it, treaties, it's me and you agreeing on things. It's not necessarily like with the state level. I mean, with the federal constitutions, it's for yes for all of us, but it's also going outside of our states. So it's
okay. Yeah,
The
it's
treaties are much more important. They carry more weight on the international scene as well than
mhm,
constitutions. So that's why Anna points that out. And there are federal state constitutions. Now, that's important to understand because when we say federal state constitutions, that's going to be part of something I hope uh, people will take away today when we get to the next section is that we're the state constitutions are something that came about as a result of the hijacking of the Constitution for the United States. It's what Lincoln
mhm.
did in 1860, and we're going to go there next. But just municipal constitutions, the federal and municipal, um, those are corporate charters, as you see here. So
Okay, yeah.
that's what we're running under today, and that's why it's so tyrannical out there. Is everyone is thinking that of the unincorporated or state level constitution that was originally created, in the colonies, and that's not really what we're dealing with here. And
Mhm,
so here's an example. The Ohio State is one of the continental United States. It's one of the states we have in United States of America,
mhm.
and it's on the land jurisdiction. Notice that's a republic. Even Article 4 of the Massachusetts Constitution says, we can govern as a republic.
Oh,
So,
this is interesting. So each state is a republic on its own?
yes. Okay.
That's
So
interesting.
now that's how it started. Remember,
Okay.
Ohio was not one of the originals, um, but we're going to talk a little bit about what we have done since the Massachusetts Assembly has been in session. And, and I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but it all depends on how it's put. Notice it's the Ohio state. It's a
Mhm.
continental United State. It's one of those state. It's a legitimate land state. The state of Ohio. Notice how they changed the wording. Is a corporate
Exactly.
franchise of what? The federal United States. That's not the United States of America. That's what happened in 1860 and on. So we're going to just touch on that. And that's the sea jurisdiction. That's where most of us
Mhm.
have been put. We've been taken off the land and put into the sea jurisdiction. It's a constitutional democracy. And I said to you before we came online that um, given that this is an election season for the governor of states,
Mhm.
um, the on the Democratic side, for example, you have one of the candidates trying to commit Healy to 3 debates, and Healy's procrastinating because um, she's looking at surveys and polls and things like that, and finds herself ahead. And why would she give her opponent uh, any free publicity or anything like that? Well, that's a democracy. The way we work
Oh,
on
that's
our side,
interesting.
we don't have anything to do with any of that stuff because what she's basically going to try to do is business as usual. And the other side, the Republican side, it's the same thing. They're going to run the state of Massachusetts incorporated. They're not going to have
Mhm.
anything to do with us. And then
With
you
the
have
private corporation, perhaps
it's
we
a
should spell it out a little bit further. The private corporation of the state of Massachusetts, with its private corporate statutes,
Yes,
which
it
are
has a
being
Dun and
passed off
Bradstreet
as
number.
code.
Yes. Yeah. It has a Dun and Bradstreet number. Boston has a Dun and Bradstreet number. All of the cities and towns, because they're all part of this corporate makeup that took place starting in 1860. But if you notice the wording, Ohio State, State of
Mhm.
Ohio, there's upper and lower case. And then all of a sudden we get to the state of Ohio, all in uppercase. And that's for the municipalities. And that's what we call an international city state. And this is what gets people confused. And so I don't, we don't,
Yes, that
we
is
don't,
interesting. The Washington D.C. municipality thing. The-
yes. And we can go, further into that, but we tend to lose people there because their whole, the whole idea of what they have done is to have people confused. And you can see
That's
here,
right. But I think, well, you've certainly done a good job, Ron, explaining to people this whole setup over our last few podcasts. But I think some people, especially, forget the ones who really don't know anything about it, but there are some people who are somewhat educated in this understanding that we are, delving further into over here. And people understand that in 1871, wasn't it, that Washington, D.C. was set up as a corporation. And that constitutes the federal United States government at this
yeah,
point,
we're going to
and
go there.
everything else has been sub-franchised into it.
Yeah, and we're going to jump there. I just wanted to make people aware of something leading right to
Mhm.
here. So, and the United Nations now incorporated, because
Mhm.
again, everything out there is corporate now. It's not only in the
Mhm.
it's not only here in our country, but across the world. So everything is all contracts and corporations. And as of this writing, the United Nations bought all of the DC municipal franchises because they were on the brink of bankruptcy. And so now you have something, the state of Ohio will be operated by the United Nations. So what was once part of the Washington, D.C. municipality, all of these states, all of the municipal franchises have been sold to the United Nations.
This is
And
huge. That would be wonderful if you could just pause right here and explain this a little bit further, because this sort of explains all of the sanctuary cities, the resilient cities, all of that structure now in the US and in each of our cities and our states.
absolutely.
And many people talk about, oh, the United Nations is here, but nobody seems to know what exactly it is. And it comes back to this, right, that Anna is informing us about. They actually bought the DC municipal franchises.
Because of bankruptcies. They bankrupted these incorporations two or three times in our history since 1860, uh, and that's their moda that's their operandi. That's how they do things. Is what they do is they run up all this debt, declare bankruptcy, and throw that debt onto Americans, and that's why we're called debt slaves for the most part, is
Mhm.
because they're using us as chattel or as assets, to go back out and create something else under a new name and start all over again. And so I what one of the things that's important for people here in Massachusetts and whomever else is listening, when you get something in the mail, and if you notice, if it's in all caps,
Mhm.
be it John Quincy Adams, John Q. Adams, those are not you. Those are trusts, and that is part of this fraud that they have that put upon the people, not only in here in the United States, but across the world. So when you receive something like this in the mail, there are options you have once you come back to the land and soil to fight back against this, because this isn't you that they're sending this to, and you don't have to really respond to this, or if you do, there's a specific way that you do. And the more people that catch on and start pushing back, against these corporations, before long you won't be receiving these types of things, because they know if they do that there's going to be a liability on them. And I said,
Yeah, and I think at some point we should talk about that, Ron, this whole notion of the all caps name actually being used, not just as legal fiction, strawman, etc., but it's being used as the name of a trust, and what is happening with that trust, and why you don't need to respond when you get those statements and bills or whatever they are in the mail, using that all caps name, and how you can call on that trust to pay your bills rather than repaying them.
Exactly, and like I said, in the coming weeks and months, more of that is going to be coming out, and we'll be talking about that here. But
Okay.
what we want people today to understand is it is confusing. Which United States are we talking about? Which state
Hmm.
are we referring to? You know, which constitution and which citizen? And the citizen part becomes very, very important, and that's what we're talking about. There's no need to go out and vote in any of these elections because we know, both of us, because we participated, be it standing out with signs, or I was a city councilor
Hmm.
at one point, so I seen it from
That's
the
right.
inside.
Hmm.
And it's not going to matter. It's not going to change because it's a corporation, and they are the rules that that govern these corporations is not what you think. You do not have rights. I should say the Bill of Rights in the
Hmm.
U.S. If you're a U.S. citizen. If you are a state citizen or a state national, you have the Bill of Rights. If you are a U.S. citizen, you have civil rights. And as we all know, civil rights can be taken away or given whenever they feel like it. And that's what people are experiencing today with the mandates and some of the other subversive activities that the other jurisdiction is infringing upon people with is because they know how this system works and they use it to their advantage. So I just wanted you to be aware if you're confused and say, well, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Well, it's sometimes I can get confused even. I have to go back because during the course of any day and when you're listening to news or anything else, you have to be paying attention to who's saying what and how they're saying it because there's a difference in how things are working, and it's really got people really confused.
Hmm.
And the point is, there's a reason for the use of all these deceptive similar names, and it's what to promote the fraud because you and I or anyone else that has not heard of this before is going to think, well, no, these people are nuts, you know. But it's not. It's truly a plan that has been in in progress for the last 150 years here in our country, and this is where it all starts right here. So I'm just moving along. This is like it
Okay.
says, where everything ran amok. Okay,
Right.
and
Hmm.
so here we go. 1860, Abraham Lincoln's elected president of the United States, the commercial company. Why am I saying that? Because Abraham Lincoln was an attorney. And in the Constitution for the United States of America, not the Constitution of, there's 13 where the Nobility Act, if you if you're an attorney or if you hold some other, like attorneys, as you know, use the term esquire. So if you are an attorney or something where you are committed or obligated to something outside of the United States, you cannot serve in public office. So he was not the president of the United States of America. He was the president of a commercial company. Then 11, this is where the Civil War, 11
Hmm.
congressional delegations, they walked out, leaving Congress without an agreed upon date to come back into session. So there wasn't enough congressional delegates left to call a quorum. So Lincoln had a problem. So what did he do? He formed a Delaware corporation doing business at, oh, here we go again, the United States of America. But what is this? It's not our, it's not the America we always thought. He created something just like it called the United States of America, Inc. This is where the confusion starts. And he did, what did he do? He took the remaining members of Congress, not the not the 11 delegations, the southern states that left, but the
The
remaining,
northern states.
the
Mhm.
northern states for that, for the most part. And he made them what? The board of directors for this new corporation. So the United States of America, we have all grown up thinking about, is now been put on a shelf. And he's put this in place of it. And he took the remaining Congress people and put them on something as board of directors. So what? He could continue doing business because with no quorum, the country's on hold. He,
It's sort of like building a greenhouse on the lawn of the White House.
yeah,
Just stuck the greenhouse right there and put the Congress people in there and called it, the new
right,
US government.
exactly. And this is where the third big lie. We can go back and talk about the other two, but notice here, the unite. Look at the united. It's
Lowercase.
it's an adjective. It's
It's an
lowercase.
adjective, yeah.
Right. States of America, it never agreed to anything that Lincoln did. It didn't contract for any services from him doing business as the United States Inc. He just
Hmm.
what? Put ours on a shelf, the Constitution for there's that again, the adjective, because all of the states, the 13 colonies, if we want to go back to the beginning, they united and called themselves the States of America, and then created a holding company called, as we learned 2 weeks ago, the United States of America. That's why he took this name, is
Now,
because,
do you think those northern states were very aware of what he was doing when they joined his little venture
yes,
as board of
well,
directors? So
they
they
did
were aware.
because the real fact of the matter is what really, when you, and there's better people, and we know that, Bobby Graves, who is
Mhm.
a state national in Oregon, has a lot of great history, and he can tell you in great detail just what the purpose of that conflict was about, and it was basically economics. Unfortunately, it really wasn't about slavery. It was
Mhm.
keeping that industrial revolution going. They needed that cotton in the South, but
Mhm.
that's for another day because I don't.
Absolutely. Let's certainly get to that subject.
Yeah,
Let's make a note of it and get back to it with Bobby
well, we can
Graves
bring
or
him on even
some
if
other
you'd like at
historian.
some point. We
Definitely,
talked about
definitely.
that. So all we're saying here is please understand, United States, the commercial company, does not equal, and here we are playing with words again, the United States Inc. That doesn't equal the United States of America Inc. Capital here, lowercase
Hmm.
here. So this is what they've done to us. All of these different things have happened since Lincoln, and everyone is confused at this point. And when
So
they
many
hear,
covers, so many names.
but look how close they are to each other.
Yeah, very similar.
That's word art.
This is
That's that
the
word
root of the
magic.
confusion.
That's what created
Word
the
magic.
confusion, you know.
Yeah.
And so as a result, there's no valid contract binding the states of America, the states, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Virginia, any of those, to any corporation merely claiming to be a successor to the United States, the commercial company, which Lincoln bankrupted. Okay, so what they're
Hmm.
doing, what the states are doing, has nothing to do with the real states of America, which are the 50 states, or the United States of America. It's all a fraud. And it's been that
Hmm.
way since 1860. There's no contracts. That's what Anna's been trying to get people to understand. And these people here, and this is what we talked about earlier, Anna now has standing in front of all of these people because of the history she's presenting and we're learning about here, and the evidence that she's brought forward that Americans do exist. The assemblies are in session, and we're building back the United States of America, the real United States of America. They have
Hmm.
put, they have declared we're interregnum, if I'm saying that correctly, which it means you're sort of missing in action.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
she,
yeah, and
what she,
yeah, I think this notion of who these people are really might be opposite or relevant to this conversation, Ron, because who are they really? I mean, we know who the Pope is. We know who the British monarch has been, the Queen for a long time, etc. But what is this concept of the international trustees? Because does
well, they
that have
are.
to do?
They are. That goes back to the first trust. Now they're supposed to be overseeing and making sure, for example, that Lincoln shouldn't have been able to get away with that. They're our trustees because it goes back before Lincoln, obviously. Because we know about the British
Hmm.
because we have a peace treaty with them, a treaty
Hmm.
again. And
Right.
since 1924, that was supposed to be part of the agreement because remember, the Internal Revenue Serv the I'm sorry, the Federal Reserve Bank came in what 1913. Um, Wilson,
They were setting up from 1910, I think, and then in 1913 they pulled it off. They set up the
on
Fed.
Christmas Eve,
Mm,
so talk about fraud. But these are the
yeah.
people that were supposed to be pushing back on Lincoln and saying, wait a minute, everything you've done is incorrect. You can't do it. You need to stop and you need to figure things out before you can move forward. And they didn't do it. Instead, what they did is they encouraged it and even built upon it. And that's what we're going to learn is despite their only equity contract. This is what I'm talking about. See, they were
The
supposed to
Global
be overseen.
Estate Trust. Yes,
Right.
I know. I think Anna's got a whole chapter in this book just on the trust. And maybe that's something for another day. We can just talk about this trust situation because it's like an overarching kind of scenario
It is.
engulfing the globe.
And that
So.
goes back to to the beginning where when Peter, the Apostle Peter, passed, and the Pope understood, well, now it's all in my hands, and so he was supposed to be the trustee overseeing and making sure that the church ran right and the real teachings
Hmm.
of Yeshua, because you don't want
Hmm.
to, based on what Anna's saying, when you understand what Christ means, and
Yeah.
it's not
Hmm.
what everyone thinks it means. Promising friendship, and see, this is what they were supposed to be doing. They haven't done it. These people here,
Yeah, so
they
I
have
think that's
not
a whole
kept our best
conversation in
interest.
itself because the whole
Exactly.
trust thing is very interesting, particularly people who don't understand the Catholic background over here and what Pope Boniface was it? The Humum Sanctum
Yes.
Trust. He claimed ownership of the land, the sea, the air, etc.
Exactly.
And and how
Right.
things have sort of come down to us from those guys, from those
Yeah,
popes.
he's God on earth, or whatever. No.
Mm.
But this is where it all starts. Is 1862 the corporate Congress? Remember, because he made them boards of the on the put Congress on the board of directors.
Mm-hmm.
Changed the meaning of one word, and even in Massachusetts, if you go and you want to file a complaint against an attorney, if you go to their site and you want to do a bar grievance,
Mm-hmm.
they also have their glossary. And in that, I looked it up, and even in
Okay.
the Massachusetts glossary for the attorneys, the word person means corporation.
Wow.
So,
So
you know,
dating back to this time period, to
this is where the fraud
1862.
started right here because
Amazing.
we're people. We're in God's image.
Hmm.
And you and I would use the word person as thinking of a living being.
Would
They're
you call
saying,
this treason that occurred in 1862 over here?
yes. Oh gosh, Anna talks about treason all the time. Some people should be hung. You know,
Yeah, so this is treason against the people, isn't it?
yes, it is.
Mm.
And I know people are going to complain at us and say, "Oh no, Lincoln, Lincoln, Lincoln," because we've been thought to think maybe
He
of the
didn't save the
Gettysburg
slaves.
Address.
That's the storyline
Right?
of the mythology. We talked about it the last one of the
Yeah,
podcasts.
he didn't save the slaves. He put us all into slavery.
Mm-hmm.
With just changing these words.
Yeah.
So from 1862 to today, person means corporation. in their federalese. And so what did they do to us? They put us into their federalese. So this is going to become important moving forward. So ever since that time, they functioned as officers of a private, mostly foreign owned, because we know the Pope owns it. We know the British monarchy, the Bank of London. Um, those
Hmm.
are the real holders
The
of
City of
assets.
London, the Crown Corporation.
Yeah. So for government purposes only, a person is no longer a people. See, we're people. And by the way, that lower P, you're on the land with that. There's all words have
Hmm.
meaning, and we're not taught that in schools anymore. I'm old enough to remember, where we were taught phonics and we learned Latin, and
Oh, right.
some
The
places still
Latin
do.
roots of words,
Yes,
yeah.
very important. Um, and so they should be bringing that type of stuff back. It is a
Mm.
corporation, 37th Congress. Okay, so this is what he does. General, this is the first executive order in our country, Order 100. It's the Lieber Code, and he
Oh, the
did that.
Lieber Code.
Yeah, he did that on the 24th, and on the 25th, he bankrupted our original United States, the commercial company. That's the, if you will, the Confederation. We can again, we touched on
Hmm.
that last week, but
Right.
I just want people to know that what United States, what citizen, so on and so forth. It gets very confusing. And as you look into this more, it becomes a little clearer. So by the end of the war, the southern states are ruined. The northern states were bankrupt, okay, because it took a lot. We didn't have a lot
Hmm.
in the United States at the time. There's no real government, just the Lieber Code and the corporation that Lincoln put in place. Now, we don't really know what Lincoln might have done with that corporation here that he created because he was assassinated. Now, he might have,
That's right. There was some redeeming aspects to his activities, right? Because he was trying to bring back an American currency that was separate from the fiat currency.
yes, the greenback,
The
okay,
greenback, right? Greenback.
stuff like that. But Andrew, he knows. So he's trying to declare peace 3 times. And he couldn't do it. Again,
Mm.
first of all, he had no authority to do it. Yet, despite the signed by Grant on the land and peace declared by Johnson, this stuff here, we're at peace, acting as the board of directors because they had no legitimacy. They put the United States of
Mm.
America on a shelf. So it's that board of directors, private for profit corporation, that kept the war going. In what jurisdiction? Not on the land and soil,
Mm. Mm. The
in
maritime, the
the maritime.
jurisdiction of the sea.
So we go on here, and together the 39th, and they just keep going and violating their own constitution, even, with it was violated by the Reconstruction Act, was violated by 1867. Um, so these go together. Article 4, this one's important. It's even in
Hmm.
our Constitution, Article 4, Section 4. Denial of what? A Republican form of government. No democracy. That's mob rule. We all have a right to a Republican form of government, every state, and that includes at the national level as well. And that they violated the 30 unlawfully exercised exclusive legislation outside of the district, allowing federal enclave. So in other words, they took that 10-mile radius in
Mm.
Washington
This is where they
and
did that,
spread it
yeah.
out and spread it out. Like, for example, when you walk into a post office, that's a federal enclave. If you walk on a military base, that's a federal
Mm.
enclave. We give them permission to use that land. Washington D.C. was what? That land was donated by what? Maryland and Virginia. So
10
why
square miles,
10 square
just taken
miles?
from Maryland and Virginia, the little
Yeah,
corners,
yeah.
and pulled together.
So violated the formed unlawful de facto federal. Now here's where we have our problems today. They're not. the original states. They're federal states. Within the organic, this is what we had before this point in time, in the 1860s. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
we had this, the organic states, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island. Now it's the state of Massachusetts. It's corporations, unions to operate as just like McDonald's. The federal government created franchises, state of Massachusetts, state of Connecticut, so on and so forth. And that's what they did there. So again, I want to try to, have time for a little discussion before, we end. So the
Mm-hmm.
same corporate Congress claiming to represent American states while acting as officers of a private for profit, deceptively named governmental service corporation. That's the same one Lincoln created. What did they do? They created these districts in the southern states because you had some people that were resistant still, and they created these district commanders, and there's where our courts come from today. Is these judges, they run civil tribunals. It's no different when you walk into a courtroom today. This has never gone away. To run civil tribunals to deal with blah blah, the devils, that the rebels, you
Well,
know
the rebels, I mean, does that, so that's from back in the day, but isn't that how they see people even today? They see people as
exactly.
rebels, felons, enemy combatants, all that.
As we go forward, you will find that that's exactly what Franklin Roosevelt did to us. He declared us
Mm.
enemies of the state. There's a certain law.
Trading with the Enemies Act, right?
Right,
Mm.
exactly. So they what they did from this is they created an additional form of law called the special admiralty or presidential admiralty. And so when you go into a courtroom, or even if you look sometimes when someone's speaking down in Washington, they have the flag, but what do they have around it? They have the gold fringe. That's a war flag. They're still at war, and they're still considering us enemies of the state.
And that's also a sea flag. It's maritime jurisdiction of the sea,
Right.
right? With that
Exactly.
gold fringe.
Yes. So can you see how it's been fraud since 1860? The
Hmm.
administrative abuse of both the civil authority and power continue today, up until today. This is why, and let us stop for a moment and make it clear for people that when you're out there protesting and when you're out there asking for our government, our state government or our federal government to do things that are in the best interest of we the people, this is why they're not listening. And I use, for example, I think I did it in the last podcast. How many people stood out and said, when they were voting on licenses for illegal immigrants, and again, I understand people might be offended by some of that wording, and there was a big pushback against, no, we shouldn't be doing that. And yet, what did they do? Overwhelmingly ignored the people and went and passed that law. Now, I'm not sure where Baker flip flops all over the place. So I'm not sure where that law is at the moment, if he signed that into law. But here, that was an example of them just ignoring the will and the wishes of the people, because again, it's a constitution, it's a corporation, and that would have never have happened in the Massachusetts Assembly, because that discussion would have
No, the
first.
whole thing about the masses, well, I was writing letters to the guy who's the Secretary of Education, the commissioner, whatever, Jeffrey
Riley, I
somebody.
think, yeah, Jeffrey
Oh,
Riley, I
Riley,
think.
thank you. Yeah, that guy. And to the board of education in Massachusetts, and also to the local people. I was writing letters, sending information, actually information on podcasts I had with doctors, as well as information on the dangers of mass from many, many doctors, many groups of medical professionals talking about it. And they ignored everything. They ignored my letters and they ignored the words, voices, and protests of almost 7,000 Massachusetts parents who have congregated now on Facebook, who held rallies in front of the Massachusetts State House, etc., they gagged our children for the whole of the past year. And it's only now that they have lifted that mandate, and it's still not been lifted in Boston. Boston public schools have still got that mask mandate on. But it's
Well,
off in our schools now, the public schools.
yes, and that can be changed rather easily if people would come back onto the land, declare themselves state nationals, become state citizens, and help build back the unincorporated government, the four pillars of the government in any state. Uh,
I
it
wanted
can
to
be,
ask you a little bit about that today before we close, actually.
yes, that's why
Those
I'm moving
four
right along.
pillars.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because now they just basically took the Constitution for the United States, which is the Constitution we think of and recognize, but instead you can't find this. I think Bobby Graves says he has a copy. He found because Lincoln stopped the printing of this back in the 1860s. It's very hard to find. I'm not even sure if it's in the
Lincoln
Library of
stopped the
Congress.
printing? Wow. What a
So,
traitor.
well, he was trying, he locked up a lot of people in the press, as you know. He was very dictatorial at that time.
Oh, it gets
And
worse and worse. No, I'm just learning all this about Lincoln. Sorry, I don't really have a deep,
yeah,
rooting in American history, so
yeah, we
this is
don't.
amazing.
But the constant now, this is all you can find on the internet or anywhere else is the Constitution of. That's a corporate constitution. That's nothing to do with us. And the articles and bylaws of a commercial court, there were no need for any. They didn't even have to ratify it in Seward, right here, 28 USC. United
Hmm.
States equals federal corporation equals commercial corporation doing business as United States. There's that confusion again, keeping the words similar. And then I'm moving rather quickly because we don't want to go too long. But the
Hmm.
14th Amendment excludes people like me and you who are state nationals or state citizens from voting in private corporate elections. So anyone listening to this that's going to be voting, you are not voting for people that are going to be representing you. You're voting for the board of directors of the Massachusetts Corporation. And American state citizens are referred to as peaceful, and we are peaceful inhabitants of the land, and they disenfranchise us, and that's what it says. We're all persons, all corporations, um, um, which means corporate. There it is, right there, federalese, as citizens of the United States. Didn't say which one.
Hmm.
That is talking about commercial corporations and subject to the jurisdictions thereof, which is not the jurisdiction of the land. So when you're voting, if you think you're going to have any kind of change or impact, I don't want to be discouraging, but it's just not going to happen because it's corporate and commercial jurisdiction you're voting for, and it's not the law of the land. It's the international jurisdiction of the sea.
And I think you also mentioned something that could be emphasized, Ron, and that was you're not voting for representatives of the people, even though
No,
you're told you are. You see, that's the continuing fraud because continuously, I mean, if you look at the election campaigns, you look at the language they use on their websites, their signs, etc., and the words they use on TV, they say they're representing the people. That's what they say. But they're not doing that. They're actually, what are they? Board of directors of this corporation?
exactly. It's and so the governor, as a matter of fact, one of our assembly members, they've now changed it. Uh, it said he was the president of Massachusetts. In other words, the corporate head of Massachusetts, and they then caught, figured out what they did there, and they changed it. But she has a copy of that.
That's
Uh,
really interesting because that's more like the truth, right? Because that's what it is. Their titled character is within this corporation, president or CEO or treasurer or things like that.
yes, and so the same 14th Amendment established federal states. This is what we're talking about now. They're state franchises. They're not the unincorporated Massachusetts of the soil, the land and soil. It's they're corporations. a group running, they're running it as corporations. And sure, they were elected. This is what we're just talking about now, but you don't really know who you're electing for what, because again,
Mhm.
it's that word art. All of the words are so close together, but notice some are uppercase, some are upper and lowercase, some are lowercase. So you don't, this is where they have people confused. And it's been going on at the fraud, because fraud never
That's
goes
it,
away.
yes. The Congress people speak in those terms. I represent my constituents, tell me this and that, and I
Yes,
represent my people, blah, blah, but they're not really representing anybody.
no. So just so we're clear, this, and this, Anna does a good job. This is a very insightful publication that you can find on the internet or purchase. When American state citizens elect members of Congress, when we do, me and you as state citizens, state nationals, to public office, those people take their oath to what? The United States of America, major, the first one that we talked about. And you can see, or states of America, because look at the United again. It's an adjective, it's describing that those states have come together, they're united, and they act
Hmm.
as deputies. They're our fiduciary officers, and they're liable for their actions. So if they don't follow through, and this is what we can now do, and what I've done to my local officials is made them aware of my change and how they're going to have to interact with me, and of course silence, because if they were to recognize the jurisdiction, everything that they have been doing is going to have to change. So it's they're slowly coming to it, but it's been a hard fight. Individually and commercially liable for their acts. So when United
Hmm.
States citizens elect members of their corporate Congress, to this is what you're doing in Massachusetts with Healy or whomever else. Uh, and we have, as I said to you on a prior podcast, we've reached out to these candidates to ask, well, how are you going to deal with us? Because we are in session, and now with Anna putting a hold on Federal Reserve notes, what are they going to do when when there's the private reserve notes are no longer out there? How are they going to run their business? How are they going to run their corporation? They need to talk with us because we're the legitimate government. They're just not there yet. They take their oaths to who? The United States corporation, and they merely claim to represent. That's what you just said, Ramola. Same thing on the
Hmm.
state level. Same thing. Like
It's
actors of,
huge. I mean, I think what they've done here is a huge fraud because claiming to represent the people and then absolutely being non-responsive to the people. People actually go and talk to them, make phone calls to them, send emails to them, send letters to them. They make a lot of mumbling sounds like, oh, we'll take your concerns into consideration, blah, blah, and nothing happens.
and
Nothing
that's,
happens.
she even points out, why would a Republican form of government have to have a Pledge of Allegiance?
That,
Because
by
you're,
the way, is a huge, huge point. I used it in my article. The Pledge of Allegiance to me, it's astounding. Do go
well,
ahead and talk about that. The
well, that's
irony
because
of
you're
that
pledging
pledge.
allegiance to something other than what you think you are. You don't.
Hmm.
You're a Republican. Our rightful government need. There's no more to say. You are. You have to
Well, the
understand who
language,
you
if you can you actually just move your cursor a little bit so we can see the graphic over there, Ron, because that part, there's a little excerpt from the pledge that's absolutely bombshell. Um, there we
are. Is it?
go.
Yeah.
I pledge my allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. So that line is the line, the republic for which it stands. I mean, that should be sort of a huge red alert to everybody. Every lawyer, for instance, who doesn't look at this language very closely. So this is the actual revelation or disclosure that the U.S. of A. mentioned in the pledge is not the USA on the land, but it's the USA incorporated, as
Exactly.
Anna's pointed out here.
And your give your allegiance. Your it's servitude. And that's, again, I don't mean to. So that never voting. This is the best argument. Help us build back
Hmm.
the Massachusetts Assembly. Take back your responsibilities, and with what's going to be happening in the next few weeks and months when it comes to the Federal Reserve notes and the resources that the other jurisdiction is going to have access to, um, it's going to be very difficult for them. And what we want to do is be there for people when things start to get a little bit more difficult. Not that it's not difficult enough, given what they're doing to us and what they're not telling us they're doing to us, but voting is it's just a waste of time because
Hmm.
they're
So,
not going to be there for you.
so basically, Ron, you're saying that at this point in time, Anna's made a couple of sort of major declarations, proclamations, given notice, etc., that are absolutely rooted in reality and fact, that
Yes,
indeed the FRNs are no longer going to be printed. I mean, that's huge.
yes,
That's the US dollar that we know of, the green dollar that we use, the
yes.
FRN.
And she
So,
became the fiduciary as well on the international level because of this is the difference, as you were saying. There's many people that talk about how the history has been stolen from us, but no one has
mhm,
done the due diligence and brought Americans back from the precipice of extinction like Anna has, and that is why she's been given this real authority at both the international level and the and I passed it along to you, and you put it up on
yeah.
the concerned citizen site, and that's what makes you different. You're pointing out there's an alternative here, and she addressed that to J.P. Morgan, and that she's the fiduciary here, and that they're going to be stopping the printing of any more um, Federal Reserve notes. And people should read that article because they might think
And
it's
at the end, I'll show the website, or you
okay.
can, before we close, we can show the
Okay,
website
because
so people can see it. And I'm certainly very keen, Ron, to keep covering and keep reposting those particularly pointful and significant articles that Anna's putting out currently, which alert everybody in the US and the world, as to what's really happening.
and I want to end with this. The Congress declared this is 41st Congress, third session. The Congress declared itself. Notice how she cites the references, so people can go look
Hmm.
it up. The Congress declares itself to be the successor of all United States corporations and the property of all said corporations. Well, that one word they changed, person, from somebody being a people to being a corporation. What did
Hmm.
that do to you? That changed you from a living being to a corporation. So they also own you. And what Roosevelt goes
Shocking.
to make it worse. And we'll get to that because this from this point on, as it said, this is where we ran amok. And
Hmm.
this is so it's the dilemma. We just talked about the states, and how things have gotten progressive and just out of control. And it's
Progressive criminality is what it is.
yeah. So what we need to be doing, and again, we just don't have the time to go. But here we can incline banking had hand chosen bankruptcy trustee. Now they're bankrupt even. Um, the Internal Revenue, the United States of America Inc. So you can wait for Trump to come back. You can wait for Biden. You can do whatever you want. In
Well,
that
that's
article,
the
she
buzz on
claimed
the
back all
airwaves,
that.
that's the buzz that Trump's coming back.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. He's still a president of a corporation, and it's a bankrupt one at that. So, and we don't have time to go in. We can come back on this later on, but I just
Yes, absolutely. I think you've done a great job today talking about the states and talking about how the states are all corporations and how these guys don't really represent us at the state level or even at the national level, at the federal level, right? The
right.
senators who was
Yep.
supposed to represent us, they don't really. So, but you mentioned something about how once things change, once Anna's Vendor cards come through, etc., things are likely to change, right? So,
Yes,
and you asked, what are these government corporations going to do? And some people always, well, people that I interview, people tell me we need government. We still need
we do.
government. We
Yep.
need somebody to take care of things. Yeah, but what things and how should those things be
There you
taken care
go.
of would be my question.
Yes,
Do we need tyrants? Do we need despots? Do we need people who are running private networks of corporate corruption that benefit themselves, but through their secret societies, their clubs? That's what's going on right now. The Freemasons, the what is it? The Skull and Bones, all
yes,
of the other secret societies. The cigar smoking clubs, secret handshakes. These guys are hanging out and literally sitting on everybody's heads, treating everybody as a peasant who needs to be surveilled, monitored, preyed on in some way or the other, regulated in some way or the other, restricted in
exactly.
some way or the other, right? Fined, taxed, levied to death. So that's the form of government they have given us and they continue to maintain. So my question would be, do we need that? Do we need that kind of
Well,
government as well?
Anna's just talked about that recently in a webinar. And for example, there's nothing in the Constitution that says that we need a Department of Justice or a Department of Education or a Department of Labor, Commerce. That they're just
Wonderful. I'm glad
that's the
she's
bloating.
addressing.
And I can tell you that as the Massachusetts Assembly begins to put the pillars in place, where that you're just what you just said. What worries some people on the other side is that the government that we're going to have with the unincorporated side, our side, the de jure government, the legitimate government, most of those state agencies and things will not exist. It's going to be more close to home.
Wonderful.
And
And
what we would
there's a
like to
lot
do,
of,
go ahead, I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Well,
I
what
was just going to ask, I was just going to ask, what about the people who have contracts with these current government corporations?
they're going to
Because
go
that's how
away.
they're running a lot of these things.
Well, one
They're
of the
running a
things
lot of
Anna
crime
talks
with these
about,
corporations.
well, we're now in the process in the assembly with the members that are here with us now. We're already looking at the top 10 corporations in Massachusetts because corporations have run amok and we can
Oh,
dissolve them.
absolutely.
We can dissolve them. That's what people don't
All right.
understand. So it's been brought to our attention. We'll have to wait and see if that comes to fruition. But I think it's the governor of Delaware, because of what PayPal has been doing by capturing and taking people's funds. I know the Federation has filed a lien and filed a complaint and a lien on PayPal. And I was last told, and again we'll have to wait and see, but that the governor's intention was to dissolve PayPal because they just haven't lived up to their charter, because they all have charters.
Well,
We're going to do the same thing in Massachusetts. So, and
wonderful.
all
Those
states
are
are
the
doing it.
kinds of all states are doing. This is the kind of really meaningful, significant change, positive change moving forward that I think a lot of people would be very interested in hearing more about, as we proceed. Obviously, not right now, but as things proceed and things become clearer as to what is possible and what can be done.
Yes, we're going to get pushback. People are going to think, oh, these guys are crazy. Well, you're just going to have to sit back and see, because we're far from crazy and we know things are in the midst of change already. Do we want it to go the way they're looking for it to go? Or are we going to grab our own history, understand the fraud that's taken place, and correct it? Now, what we need is for people that are here listening on the Everyday Concerned Citizens site, we need you to step forward and be part of the assembly. It takes very little to do that. And if you want that change, real change requires real change. You have to be part of it. Do not expect a representative to do it for you. That's one
I
of the
just,
things Anna wants to talk about as well moving forward. She's got a couple of sites, a couple of articles on her on her blog site where she's now trying to introduce the concept of people understanding what it means to be self-reliant and self and being responsible for one's own self. It's
Wonderful.
not going to
Mhm.
be easy. We know that.
Yeah, absolutely. I need to check out her latest article. So I just wanted to show people this is my site. If you can see my screen, Ron, at this
I
point.
can. Yes.
Okay. So this is my website, the Everyday Concerned Citizen, and this little tab over here, Restoring America, has all of the sections for the American States Assembly. This is the gateway link to the American States Assembly page. And I've put a bunch of links here and podcasts, a couple of podcasts from Anna's site that would be helpful for people to follow just to get a basic education on what the American States Assembly is all about, books that will help you. And I'll add to this list of books. I'm reading some books by David Robinson that are really helpful,
Okay.
that clarify this whole thing altogether. And then information on the correction of the process and other articles I've published across time, just replaying some of what Anna's been talking about, what other people have been talking about regarding this subject, about the US government being a corporate government, etc. So all of these resources are right here. And let me just go back and show you the Massachusetts States Assembly page, which will have this podcast when it's produced and ready. And, it's got Martin Luther King's famous speech. It's got all of our podcasts from podcast one right up till podcast four. And there are links. Each of these links will take you to an article page for that particular podcast with a little bit more text on the subject of the podcast. And I think the last one we did was absolutely critical, central, and talks about the whole birthright American scenario. So that's really important. And the boy, where was that article that we started with? I wanted to just show Anna's. Here it is. This is the article that Ron was talking about, her declaration about the FRNs, that the US government needs to stop producing these FRNs, etc.
And again, for anyone to think that, well, she can't do that, she wouldn't be putting it out there if she didn't have that standing, believe me, because
Hmm.
they'd be after her in a heartbeat. But yet, there's no pushback, you know.
Right, and I notice it's a declaration by both James Clinton Belcher, head of state for the United States of America, and Anna Maria
She's the
Reisinger,
fiduciary.
fiduciary. Okay,
And
very
Belcher has
interesting.
strong history. As people can look the Belcher fan. He was lived a few doors down, or a few farms down, if you will, from John Adams, and they
Oh
called
yeah.
on him when the Continental Army was pushing back on Washington. I think it was during the conference in Philadelphia, and they didn't have anyone that had that nobility or could help access funds from outside of the country because Washington didn't have that capacity. And Adams went to Belcher, and Belcher had the international authority. So that's why James has that lineage, and part of the
Hmm.
flag is from their flag back in Normandy, back during the European days before the revolution even. So
Hmm. Yeah,
it's
and I just wanted to go ahead.
no, I just want to encourage people. We need you to become those state nationals. If you want that change you're looking for, just becoming a state national, you're still in both jurisdictions, but you have more you have more power. You have the Bill of Rights. You have some of the things you thought you always had when you change your jurisdiction. You do not have the Bill of Rights right now, and neither did I until I changed my jurisdiction. I only had civil rights in the international sea jurisdiction. You do not have the Bill of Rights there. And that's the importance of changing your jurisdiction. But you can also push back on the mandates as our cities and towns have more state nationals. You can affect the local level, you can affect the state level, you can be the change that you're trying to be, and you will be the American you always thought you were. And those are not just slogans. You have to change your jurisdiction. You're not, or you're going to be disappointed every time you go and vote. I think Spooner says something. You're still a slave even though they give you the right to vote. Every 4 years, because nothing's going to
Hmm.
change. But this
Yeah,
site is
and you
where
know,
you can go, and this is the states.
educational information, right?
Yeah,
And the states, yeah.
yeah, and there's a whole lot of stuff you can learn. That the book we're using is there as well. Something's wrong when right there.
This one, right?
Yeah, so that's a very good one, and people have to come to that realization that it's just not going to change, and it's going to get a little bit more difficult if you don't know who you are moving forward, because they know who you are and they're taking advantage of it. As a U.S. citizen, they're going to keep coming at you with all of these different types of laws and mandates and things that inside aren't right. And until you make that change, you're at their mercy. So the everyday concerned citizen, she keeps you up to date on what they're doing in that other jurisdiction. But when you get tired of it, and you're sick and tired
Hmm.
of it, she also gives you an option of where to go to then become part
Yeah,
of that change. That's unique.
yeah.
It should be a go-to page for everyone in Massachusetts, because not only are you staying current with what's happening, you also have an option when you get sick of it and you see that what you've been doing don't work. You know,
Yes, absolutely. And as people know who've been reading my site, I'm certainly exposing some of the very dark actions of surveillance, well, actions hidden under surveillance that's being run by the current Massachusetts government, and in every state by the state governments and by the federal government, because the US military divisions have been given permission to operate their weapons over American territory, on American soil, on the heads and bodies of American citizens. That's pretty much everybody who hasn't changed their status here. But, they're still assaulting American state citizens, by the way, Ron, by calling us whatever they like, right?
sovereigns,
Felons,
sovereigns is the key
enemies.
one, because they're
Sovereigns is the key.
yeah,
Mm.
because that people look at that as uh, um, they're anti-government. They're subversives. They're
Well,
anarchists, and
that's the
that's
language
not what we
they've
are.
set up.
Yes,
It's not true. It's not true, but it's set up like that in the FBI manuals and bulletins and the Homeland Security bulletins, etc.
absolutely.
And if you look at the language that they're using for the definitions of domestic terrorism, all of this is rolled in, which is very wrong. So it needs to be openly spoken about, openly questioned, and openly challenged. People who are inside the US Inc. jurisdiction and who don't think that there is an option think they have no options. Think, like if you look at how media presents this today, they present it as, oh, it's a police state and it's just getting worse. What? Do you sit back and take that? No, you don't sit back and take that.
No,
You question it because this is absurd.
and
So,
anyone listening to the everyday concerned citizen, all 50 states have an assembly. So if you're listening here and you're from a different state, contact Romola or myself, and we can put you in touch with the coordinator in that state. Now, I want to make it clear as well, coordinators and all of these names we have right now, we're trying to put ourselves out of business. We need the four pillars: the General Assembly, the business assembly. We don't need much of that because states aren't going out into the international realm and dealing with contracts yet in our assembly. That'll come forward more. We need our jural assembly. That's the key, because we need to build back our own courts. You do not want to go into their courts. And we also need to build back our militia. And when we say that, again, they try to label that, oh, they want to run around with their guns. On the contrary, if you have ever been in a situation, say like the Flatlanders in Ohio or Indiana, where tornadoes or things like that occur, it's not the federal government that's first on the scene. Usually, it's the Salvation Army or the Amish or the Mennonites, the local people. And when we talk about militia, yes, we're supposed to be prepared for something, people coming and invading. But for the most part, that militia is there to help their neighbors, and everyone needs to be part of their militia in their county. So please don't think when we use the word militia, it's all about I have a right to carry a gun and I can go out and do this or that. On the contrary, it's preparedness, it's helping our neighbors, knowing when times are tough that we all have to come together. And that's what that is really all about, not just defending ourselves, because the Second Amendment isn't about hunting and fishing. Like Jefferson said, when the government becomes tyrannical, you have, you should overthrow it. But again, that's not our goal here. Two jurisdictions are going to be here together. Unfortunately, the other jurisdiction, especially with what Anna has just put out, their funds are going to begin at over a short period of time to diminish. So they're going to have to work with us, and we want them to know we're here peacefully. We're not here to kick you around and say, no, you got to do this or that. You do whatever you want in your jurisdiction, but you need to allow us to run the government that we do need, but from the unincorporated and the legitimate government that was here before 1860 when Lincoln began and took us off. We went off the railroad tracks and we haven't been back since. Well, we're here, we're back, and we're building, and we need people to come back to the land and soil.
And we're building a peaceful state and a peaceful
Exactly.
infrastructure. So there has to be a caveat. They can't really do anything they want in their current jurisdiction because currently they're assaulting the people, both secretly with secret terror and overtly, with all kinds of, fines, regulations, restrictions, etc. So those kinds of things I'm hoping will come to an end as, the Massachusetts State's Assembly comes forward, etc. And, there's so many things to talk about regarding this. So I thank you, Ron, for addressing different aspects of this. I wanted to ask you about those four pillars, actually. So you've given us a good overview of those four pillars, and hopefully in future conversations you will speak a little more about
Yeah,
what exactly is
retired
needed.
nurses. Yeah, we need retired nurses, because again, the health, we're looking at it not strictly from the pharmaceutical point of view.
Mhm.
We need retired police officers, military, to help us build the General Assembly. We need sheriffs in the counties because our sheriffs are the legitimate sheriffs and they oversee the county, even above the corporate sheriffs that are there. Our General Assembly, when we get that back in session, then we approach the courts that you see in each city and town, and we share those courts with them because we're going to bring some of their people into our courts and vice versa. But it's the sheriff and the marshal at arms and the people that we need to, as we're building the assembly, that are going to help bridge the gap. Because if, for example, if somebody in our jurisdiction is arrested or held by the other jurisdiction, the law enforcement people, rather, ours are peacekeepers. Uh, well, we're going to pick up the phone and call our sheriff or somebody in our jurisdiction, and there will be communication between the two because we don't abide. Our laws are not their laws. It's their statutes, laws. It's just like McDonald's or IBM. IBM, all the blue suits, same tie, you have to follow their rules. Well, that's the same thing in their jurisdiction, would be the same in ours, but our common law is much, much different. So it's that we need those people that understand, some of that. They don't have to be lawyers that, stopped being bar attorneys, but we need to build that infrastructure, and that's what I'd like to see happen with the concerned everyday citizen, is that we you're able at some point, Romola, to diminish having to point out the problems and the hidden agenda, and we can talk more as everyday concerned citizens. What a great name! uh, and build back what has to really happen in the country, because one way or the other things are going to change. We can already see that we're never going back. So let's build back what we're strong.
Absolutely. And absolutely. And when I post this video, I can post a little bit of, in my notes, I would post what you've just stated, what the Massachusetts State Assembly is looking for. But in the future, feel free to send me press releases or information you want conveyed
Okay.
to the country and to the state, to the people of the state on the land. And I'll be happy to post it. I mean, my website is there, to provide a service to people, and to help create positive change. So,
Well, let me
absolutely.
suggest this, and maybe I should do it offline, but I love the everyday concerned citizen. Well, let's get these candidates from the other jurisdiction, invite them forward and say, well, we're here. How do you plan on interacting with the other jurisdiction? Because this is a wonderful opportunity for you.
Give it a shot.
Hey, I was to suspect, the front runners are going to be very nervous about it, because we're
Mhm.
legitimate, and they would have to prove where we're wrong, and they can't do that. So they're probably like Healy not wanting to make a decision on the gas tax, or, for example, Massachusetts is always run by Democrats in the House and Senate. There's never any
Maura
change there.
Healy is never going to come on my show, and she's not going to respond to me. I've written to her. I've written to her about the atrocious phenomenon of EMF assault on the people of Massachusetts, which she, as Attorney General, should be doing her every bit to
Absolutely.
stop. But
Secretary
she's
of
not
State
stopping
too,
it.
Gavin.
She's
Gavin should
overseeing
be.
it.
Yeah, he's another one.
Mhm.
He's been there forever, and it's my way or no way type of
Yeah,
situation, because it's a corporation. They can
it's
ignore you. Well,
crime. It's a crime corporation.
we're going to be addressing that, because we're not going away, and we're not cocky about it. We're just everyday peaceful people, but we're building our assembly. We will get the four pillars up, and as the finances change and this stuff comes forward in the next few weeks and months, I think it's going to be a little bit different than they think it's going to be.
Wonderful. That's really good news, and perhaps a very positive and optimistic note on which to end this conversation. Ron, is there anything else in particular that you'd like to share before we close for this afternoon?
No, we just appeal to people here in Massachusetts to become the Americans we thought we were, and that's by becoming a state national or a state citizen. And if they want to know more, they can contact Ed Folke. They can go to the Massachusetts website that you showed them,
To find
states,
the emails? Yeah,
and
I'll
or
post all the.
contact me. You can put out my email, and
Okay,
we can talk about it.
okay.
And we can go from there. But we really want
Brilliant.
Massachusetts people to know that there is an alternative to what has been going on, which is
To what's been going on and what currently pertains. And what you're also talking about really is inviting people of expertise in different arenas of endeavor to come forward, to step forward, and to volunteer their skills. Right at this point, I mean, I don't know if you have
exactly
jobs lined up currently, but volunteer at least to start to set up the new and real Massachusetts State Assembly on the ground, which would really serve the people of Massachusetts, as opposed to assaulting them with EMF weapons, with secret police and fusion center contractors and whatnot.
well, when funds start to dry up, it's going to be awful difficult for them to put together programs like that. And we are putting our budget together for, for the state. It'll be small at first, but the resources are now beginning to flow as we're talking about, and more of that should be coming. We'll be coming forward with that. So yes, we do have an idea of where we'd like to see things go in the short to medium term. And as we get more expertise, people coming into the jurisdiction with those skills, um, it'll only get that much easier, and will be much more visible than we are at the moment.
Wonderful. So what a great note to end on. So thank you again, Ron, very much. It's very hopeful news, hopeful things to look forward to, real change, positive change. And hopefully all of this will start unfolding very soon.
Yes, you will see it very, very shortly. We're very optimistic, and our numbers are growing. People are beginning to understand what we're having to say, and know we're here in peace, and we're not here to do any harm, any damage.
Wonderful. So on that note, thanks very much, Ron, again for all your contributions this morning. And thanks everyone for watching. And we'll see you again very soon. Podcast 6, I suppose. So bye for now.